I started elementary school in the mid to late 1970s, and then middle school in the 80s, and finished high school in the late 80s. I remember being in a classroom where most classrooms we didn't say very much to each other. The teacher stood, gave us the information. We were expected to learn the information and then take an assessment. Most classes. There were some classes where we got to talk and have conversations about whatever we were learning. Those were the classrooms where I learned the most, particularly my chemistry classroom in high school. I remember talking with other students in the classroom. I remember talking about molecular structure. I absolutely love to talk about molecular structure to this day. And the teacher, he really was engaging. And when he would give us a new concept, he would let us talk to each other. I don't know if he knew this, but he was doing something in with regards to the science of learning before I even knew what the science of learning was. And I remember loving to go to the classroom. Now, he was a safe place to go. He really respected the students. The students really respected him. And we knew he was authentic and credible because we were learning. I mean, we were learning chemistry. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about the science of learning and cooperative learning in a classroom. There are a couple of things that happen in the classroom or in a work environment, in a professional development, and any setting when people talk to each other. Now, I've seen this modeled in professional development where the presenter will have a conversation, talk a little bit about whatever the training is, and then say, talk to the neighbor next to you about what you just heard. Because here's what is happening when you allow students to talk to each other, teachers to talk to each other during a professional training, professional development. Maybe there is something going on where you're having collaborative conversations. I'm going to give you 5 things on what is happening when you allow students to talk to each other in the classroom. Neuroencoding, synaptic plasticity, emotional engagement, dopamine release, distributed practice. When students are neuroencoding, the act of discussing and explaining information to peers engages multiple areas of the brain, which is crucial for forming and organizing new memories. This type of engagement helps to create strong neural connections, making the information more likely to be stored in long-term memory. When you're in the classroom, I want you to watch what is happening with students when they talk to each other. I want you to really notice and watch their facial expressions. You can tell when a student isn't quite understanding. You can tell when they're fully engaged with a peer. And when you do this, be very, very intentional. When you say, talk in your groups about whatever, and they all talk at the same time, they're not listening. They're only saying something. Now, there's a good reason that you want the kids to just repeat what you said. That's okay. Clearly, that's okay. You say a word, they repeat it. You say a phrase, they repeat it. You just want them to put it into a memory space because there's evidence that helps them put it into their memory. However, when students are dialoguing back and forth, you need to give them directions and say, A student, B student. First student in the group of 3 explains what just happened, whatever that looks like. You want students to be listening to what is happening. And you can see, we call this expert noticing. When you can really see what is happening with their facial expression in the classroom, you can tell if they are putting this into a memory. And that encoding will increase neuroplasticity in the brain. When you do this with kids, or your students in the classroom, have them talk to each other. When they repeat what is happening, when they explain, and they're, again, that lower level of learning, when they're just talking about the learning, but when they can re-explain it and apply it in a different form or in a different activity, you can tell that they are increasing their knowledge and it's going into their long-term memory. You want them to be able to be plastic. The brain is very plastic. It's malleable. It can change. They can learn new things. Your brain is always increasing the connections in the brain, yours. So imagine what is happening with a student who's growing exponentially, whether it's elementary, middle, or high school. When they repeat this activity, they start to retrieve and remember and recall this information so that they can continue to remember it later, whether it's during the school year or the next school year. You remember that one teacher where you just felt like you were totally safe and you felt like you could engage in the classroom and your emotions felt joyful or happy? That is when memories stick. And we activate a part of the brain when we have a social interaction with students. First of all, students want to talk to their friends. So we might as well let them talk. And then we get them talking about what is happening with the learning. And there's a social connection. That social connection and feeling of joy and understanding from the perspective of another student will create emotional connections to the learning. When you can create that emotional connection along with the plasticity and along with the collaboration in the classroom, your students will enhance and grow their academic knowledge exponentially. And they'll be able to retrieve that information faster because you gave them a safe space to do so. And when you do this, here's a tip: give them sentence frames and give them, I never considered. What about? Have you ever thought about? I really like when. I don't know if that's correct. Can I offer you some information? That way, when you have a group of students at different academic levels, they're honoring the student based on the information they gave. There's always going to be a student that may know more. There's always going to be a student that may know less. But they can have meaningful conversations about what is happening in the classroom with whatever that content is. Think about how you empower students to honor the information from the student whose academic levels are really high, and then the students' academic levels that aren't at the same place as other students. I wanted to tell you that when you get kids talking to each other and they feel that happiness feeling and they feel joy in the learning and with their peers, they are releasing a neurotransmitter called dopamine. That dopamine enhances the motivation in the brain. They become motivated and it becomes an intrinsic feeling where they want to learn. They may be doing it for you if they trust you as a teacher. Your teachers actually, if you have a professional development and they liked it, they actually like the professional development, you're increasing their motivation by increasing their dopamine as well. So you can do this in any environment. It's not trickery. It's giving their brain a place to be happy and joyful, because when you increase that dopamine in the brain, you create an environment that motivates whatever learning is happening, because students can be adult learners, andragogical or andragogy learners, and pedagogy, student learner or child learner. When you start to encode on a child's brain or an adult's brain, you are creating those connections and doing this because you allow the brain is very plastic, and you engage in an emotional state and you increase that dopamine level. You are giving your students or the environment of learning the ability to now make connections and where they can retrieve this information with ease. When they retrieve that retrieval practice, when that occurs, and I mean you have something new that you've introduced, and then when you introduce it again with the old information, they're able to go and grab it and apply it to the new information. It is the most amazing thing, and students can increase their self-efficacy, their learning, their perception that they are learners. And collectively, if you haven't heard of the term collective efficacy, there's teacher collective efficacy, meaning if teachers talk about the students and what they're doing in the classroom and how they're learning and sharing test scores and having conversations about what they can do to increase it. This also occurs with students. When they are collectively talking about a topic, they increase their learning. And it is an exponential thing. And you, as the teacher, will start to be able to slow down, watch the learning happen, and watch students and listen to students pull information out of their brain in a most fantastic way. Now, I know this is a lot of information, but I want you to just, as a teacher or even a principal, I want you to realize that the brain is malleable. The science of learning states that when we allow students to converse with each other, they have the ability to create memories that allow them to retrieve information with ease so that they can take that information and use it as academic excellence. They become very, very good at not just memorizing, but learning. They put it into their long-term memory and they can take that information with them and retrieve it later. I didn't like some of my classes where I just had to listen to the teacher and the teacher just gave us all this information and I never really felt like I was learning it. Felt like I was just memorizing it. Allow your students to talk to each other. Create norms in the classroom, routines where, it doesn't feel like it's chaotic. And even if you're okay with organized chaos, that is acceptable as well. Give your students time to talk to each other. I am confident that when you do that, you will give them ownership of their learning, and they will be able to take that information with them wherever they go in life. All the way down to kindergarten through elementary, middle, and high school, they will use those skills in college and the rest of their lives, because when we have conversations with others, we are sharing information, we are activating the parts of the brain that we can pull it out of and then retrieve it with ease and then apply it somewhere else. I do hope this video was helpful. Make sure you subscribe, like, and comment. Turn on the bell, come back often, and tell me how you are implementing the science of learning where you are allowing students to collaborate in the classroom.